For decades, we've had this really powerful analogy for understanding our own minds. The idea that the brain is a computer. But what if that metaphor, as useful as it's been, is actually holding us back? Today we're going to dive into a new model that sees the mind less like a static program and more like a living, flowing river, something that carves its own path as it moves.
So let's get right to it. Is your brain really a computer? Is your mind just a piece of software running on the hardware between your ears? A fascinating new perspective argues that the answer is a pretty definitive no, and understanding why could literally change how we think about, well, ourselves.
Okay, so to really get into this, we first have to look at the classic metaphor, the one that's dominated cognitive science for more than half a century. It's simple, it's intuitive, and for a long time, it just felt right.
And here it is laid out so simply, right? The brain is the hardware, the physical machine. The mind is the software, the program running on it. It's clean, it's easy to grasp, but here's the thing. Biology is almost never that clean and simple. And that neat little separation, that might be the very heart of the problem.
So this is where things get really interesting, because that super tidy separation, that's exactly where the whole computer metaphor starts to fall apart. We're going to explore a completely new way of thinking that challenges this old view at its very core. It's called the Brain Kinematics Model, or, BKM for short. So what's actually wrong with the computer analogy? Well, it boils down to three huge assumptions that just don't work for a living brain. First off, it assumes hardware and software are totally separate things. Second, it assumes the relationship is a one-way street. The hardware limits the software, but the software doesn't physically change the hardware just by running. And third, it assumes meaning is just abstract data. The BKM model argues all three of those are flat out wrong. The bottom line is this: your thoughts aren't just running on your brain. They are physically and actively reshaping it, every single moment.
Okay, so if the mind isn't software, then what is it? Let's dig into this new model, the Brain Kinematics Model. It offers a totally different and, honestly, a much more organic alternative.
Okay, this right here is the absolute heart of the idea. In the BKM, there's no separation. The brain and the mind are a single interwoven system, a dynamical continuum. Your mental activity isn't code. It's a real physical flow of energy and tension across the actual structures of your brain. The model calls this strain. Think of it like the tension you feel when you stretch a rubber band. In this view, your mind is that physical process, not something separate from it. So just forget the whole circuit board image. The new analogy to grab onto is a living, viscoelastic field. I know, that's a mouthful, but all it really means is something that's kind of thick like honey, but also springy like Jell-O. So a thought isn't a line of code executing. No, it's more like a temporary ripple, a physical path of tension that's literally moving through that living, jelly-like material. So if the mind isn't one big program, what is it? Well, let's go back to our Jell-O field idea. A quick thought, like something in your working memory, that's like a little poke. It happens and it's gone. It barely leaves a trace. But learning a new skill, that takes repetition, right? That's like carving a deep groove into the jelly, making that same path way easier to follow the next time. And what about a single super intense emotional event? Bam! That can be like a lightning strike that reshapes the entire landscape in a single instant. Now, this new way of thinking has massive real-world implications, especially when you put a software programmer and a psychologist side by side. It's really a tale of two completely different systems.
Okay, to really nail down this difference, there's a key idea we need to talk about: determinability. It's basically just a fancy word for predictability. When you change something in a system, do you know exactly what's going to happen? The answer to that question is what separates the world of a psychologist from the world of a programmer.
And this really lays it all out, doesn't it? A programmer gets to work on a system that's engineered, it's stable, you can read everything, and the changes you make are precise. But a psychologist? They're working with a system that's self-organizing, it's constantly changing, it's shaped by its entire history, and a single intervention can cause these unpredictable ripples throughout the whole thing. The point here isn't about who's more skilled, it's that they are playing two completely different games with totally different rulebooks. So, if a therapist can't debug the mind like a programmer, what can they do? Well, this new model gives us a really powerful answer to that. And here's the core idea. Psychology isn't about rewriting lines of code. It's about reshaping the very landscape of the mind itself. It's about making certain mental paths, those default roads our thoughts and emotions love to travel, either easier to take or harder to fall into.
So what does altering the landscape actually look like? Well, it means you're shifting the fundamental settings of your mental system. For example, therapy can help you raise the threshold before you feel totally overwhelmed. Or it can help turn down the volume on those big emotional reactions. It can expand your mental bandwidth so you can handle more complexity, and it can speed up your recovery time after you get stressed out. These aren't just abstract feelings, we're talking about real, dynamic changes to the whole system.
And all of this leads us to a final, really powerful insight. The Brain Kinematics Model doesn't make psychology seem less important. If anything, it clarifies and redefines its role in a really profound way.
And this is really the final, crucial takeaway. That lack of programmer-like control, it's not a failure or a weakness of psychology. Not at all. It's just a natural consequence of the awesome, complex thing it's working with. A living, breathing, adaptive human mind. I mean, you can't program a river, right? You can only place some stones here and there to help guide its flow.
So, no, minds are not code bases that you can just go in and debug. As this quote puts it so perfectly, clinicians are not programmers. They are trajectory shapers within a living continuum. They're guides, helping to gently alter the very flow of our thoughts and feelings. It's a completely different way to think about healing. Not as fixing some broken machine, but as tending to a living, ever-changing landscape. And you know what? Maybe that makes all the difference.